Alan Huffman's with us. He's one of the two authors of We're With Nobody, along with Michael Regebian. Great to talk to you, Alan. I looked at the book. It's really fascinating. And We're With Nobody comes from the question you get asked when you do opposition research. You show up at a courthouse or at some other place, and people ask you, who are you with, when you start asking them for documents, and you say, we're with nobody. Is that basically the backstory?
That is, yeah. You know, everybody wants to know what you're up to. You walk in, you name some elected official that everyone knows, and you're asking for his tax history and this and that. And so they want to know, where you're coming from and what you're doing. They're basically just being nosy, but sometimes they're also trying to throw some obstacles in your path. And when we say we're with nobody, because you don't have to be with anybody, it pretty much ends that line of questioning.
So give us a sense of how this works. An opposition researcher is usually hired by one candidate or party to find out information, dirt, so to speak, on either the candidates they're running against or on the other party. Is that how it works? Somebody comes to you and says, we need dirt on this other person.
Yeah, usually it's very specific. They're going to, like somebody's running for Congress, they hire us basically to find out everything there is to know about their opponent, and usually about themselves as well, because there's somebody on the other side doing the same thing we're doing, and they want to know what they're finding and how they might be attacked. So that's another way that we're kind of with no one, is that even though we generally work for Democratic campaigns, we have to be completely objective in our assessments of these candidates. And there's no room for a yes man in opposition research. So we don't win any popularity contests when we come in and say, this is what we found on you, which in some cases is worse than what we found on the other guy. But it's necessary.
Do you find that most opposition researchers like you tend to work for one party, or are some just kind of paid mercenaries? They'll dig up dirt on anybody and help campaigns on either side, or do they tend to be partisan?
They tend to be partisan just because that's your network. I mean, like I'm a Democrat by, that's usually how I vote, but we have worked for Republicans when we're working against a Republican. Say it's a Republican primary, we'll work for a Republican. Not very often, because you don't have the same level of credibility. People are a little suspicious of you. And so primarily most people stay with one party. But the truth is, we would do the same thing if we were on the other side. I mean, our work wouldn't change. It would just be who ended up getting our reports.
Sure. So talk about showing up somewhere and the reaction from whoever you're talking to being, there was just somebody else here asking basically the same question. Is that common?
I would say it's common. It's happened many, many times, but it's very tantalizing to us because first of all, that you're on the same trail. You're drifting through these little towns and no one knows you're there, but then you realize there's someone else there. Maybe when you're eating in the restaurant that night, the guy or the woman is over across the room, and he or she is doing the same thing. And so it's kind of exciting to us when we know that that our competition is out there, and it inspires us, I guess, a little bit to work a little harder. But we've always wanted to just sit down and have a beer with one of these people, because it would just be interesting to hear, if their experiences were the same as ours. So,
what type of stuff are you usually looking for? In other words, you might go to a courthouse to see if there's arrest records or court documents. Are you looking for people's taxes to find what exactly? I mean, what types of documents do you look for?
Well, as we say in the book, one of our sort of basic theory is that no one is fit to lead unless proven otherwise. So, I mean, and that's a negative view, but that's the way we have to approach it, that you've got to prove us that you're worthy to lead. So we're looking for anything that indicates unfitness to lead, whether it's you haven't paid your taxes, you haven't voted regularly, which is surprisingly common, or you've been involved in a lawsuit that would indicate how you might lead. Anything that would tell the voters what kind of a leader you would be. So it really runs the gamut, but it all has to be documented, so it all has to be public records, ultimately.
Without giving any names, what is the most incredible or shocking thing you've uncovered that never made it out into mainstream media about a candidate people might be familiar with? Something that just, you found it, you presented it, and fortunately, I guess from the point of view of the candidate, never made it out. Are there really intense things?
Yes, absolutely. We found on one candidate that had been, there were allegations of child molestation. And, we couldn't document it because the police records had disappeared, but we found a, sort of an obscure newspaper article in which someone had questioned him about it, never received any real attention in the media, remarkably. And the police records had disappeared and both of the witnesses had been murdered. And we gave this to our candidate, and he was like, I don't want to have anything to do with this, and it never came out, and the guy won. And then in another case,
Wow.
we find a guy who, normally you don't go back deep into some more than maybe 10 years. You're not going to look at when they were in high school. Everybody does things when they're in high school. And does it really matter now? Well, occasionally it does. And so we found this one guy that had thrown a pipe bomb at a homecoming float when he was in high school. Well, that mattered still. And so unfortunately, he was our guy. And so we actually, we told him what we had found and a few other things that we had found, and he ended up dropping out of the race. So, you find it pretty much all over the place.
Wow. Anything on Rick Santorum you want to reveal?
No, we haven't done Rick Santorum. But, it's interesting to me. You wonder, is someone just holding back because he has really gotten the least, or is he really clean? Because this has just been this opposition research free-for-all, this Republican presidential primary. And he has, I guess, gotten off the lightest so far. And you just wonder, is someone just holding, because obviously the work has been done already. So you just wonder if they're just holding it for the right moment or if there really is nothing there.
We're speaking, of course, with Alan Huffman. The book is We're With Nobody. Talk a little bit about some of these, a couple different things from the book I want to ask you about. One strategy: if an employee tries to stifle a request, you go silent and play dumb. What does that mean?
That's one of Michael's, my partner's favorite ploys. Basically, we watch them back down average citizens every day, that come in trying to get records, and whether they just don't want to work or don't want to help them or whatever, they have all of these ploys where they can basically just sort of make you feel like you're asking for something unreasonable. And we've just found that if they say, well, this is going to be difficult to find, it's in the archives, it's going to take 3 days to retrieve it, it's going to cost $1 a page, this and that, and we just stand there and just wait. And then after they run their course, and then they say, are you willing to do that? And we say, yes, proceed. But, we've just gotten kind of a little bit accustomed to people trying to thwart us, whether they're doing it because they're on the side of the candidate we're researching or just because they don't want to do the work. It doesn't make any difference. We're not leaving until we get it.
And that was my last question. The documents you're usually looking for, are you actually entitled to these documents? I mean, what's the letter of the law on a lot of this stuff? Does it depend on someone bending the rules to give you the documents? What's the actual legal status?
The law varies from state to state, but the vast majority of documents are public record. In some states, they won't let you look at, for example, somebody's voter registration, or they may not let you look at their driver's license registration. It varies, but the vast majority, anyone can walk in there and ask for these records and get them. That's one of the beauties of living in America.
All right. The book is We're With Nobody. We've been speaking with Alan Huffman. I recommend the book. Really a pleasure to speak with you, Alan.
Same here. Thank you.